All right, here we go again today, guys. We're going to be looking at the volume of some three-dimensional shapes, and I thought, you know what? They're giving us a problem right out of the gate that involves a hemisphere. We need to talk about what a hemisphere is. And instead of radius, they give us diameter, and then on top of that, they want us to round to the 10th of a cubic foot. So let me put some diagrams up here and let's discuss what we have going on. And so here we have a sphere, which I like to think of a sphere in a weird way as a three-dimensional circle, right? And here we have a hemisphere. A hemisphere. Okay, so a hemisphere is one half of a sphere. It's like you took the sphere or the ball and you chopped it in half. I'm going to write one half down here just to remind us of a sphere that would have the same diameter, right? So, or the same radius. So what you have to do when you're dealing with the hemisphere, getting volume of a hemisphere, is you have to use this radius, plug that into the formula, get the volume of the entire sphere, then divide that by 2 or chop that in half so you can get the hemisphere. It's kind of a complicated problem. The first thing we should do is remind ourselves of what the formula is for the volume of a sphere, and it is 4/3 pi r, and be careful here, cubed, not squared for the sphere. It is pi times the radius cubed. Okay, and that down here we're going to have the same formula, but to convert to the volume of a hemisphere, we calculate our answer out, and then whatever our answer is for the sphere, we divide that by 2 or chop it in half, and that's going to give us the answer for a hemisphere with the same radius. Well, first, before we start plugging things in, we've got to find our radius. What is our radius? If our diameter, the area all the way across here, is 8.6, my radius is going to be half that. 8.6 divided by 2 equals my radius. What is 8.6 divided by 2? Well, it would be 4.3. So 4.3 equals my radius, and I'm going to put that into my formula over here. Now, I haven't done anything in Delta Math yet. We'll get to that. Let's first plug in our values into our formula. We still have 4/3, and we still have pi because we're going to use the pi button. And then we're going to put our radius in, 4.3 cubed. I can either do it this way, 4.3 cubed, or I could also write it like this, 4/3 times pi times 4.3 times 4.3 times 4.3. Because I've got 4.3 times itself 3 times. That's the same thing as 4.3 cubed. So whichever way you want to do it, I think it's easier to put this in the calculator myself. But let's use this over in the Delta Math calculator. So we're back looking at the example in Delta Math, and it's the same example, a diameter of 8.6. All we have is radius and diameter when we're working with a sphere or hemisphere. This is the volume of a sphere. To get our radius, we divide our diameter by 2, so we know our radius is 4.3. And we're going to plug this into the formula. The volume is 4/3 pi times r times r times r, or times our radius cubed, okay, gives us this. But now that's just the volume of a sphere. We've still got to divide that in half to get a hemisphere. But before we do that, let's make sure we know how to get this thing in our calculator. So I'm literally going to type it in just like it says, 4 divided by 3, and then look over here, it puts it in fraction form. Press my arrow to the right to get up here beside my fraction, times pi, and then I have to multiply that by 4.3 cubed. I can either type 4.3, which puts 4.3 over here, and click on this A to the B button, and it'll put the cursor in the exponent position for me to click 3. And you'll notice over here to the right, it has already calculated the same answer that they have up here in Delta Math. But remember, I have to divide this whole thing by 2. I have to cut it in half, because a hemisphere, if we look back over, a hemisphere is half of, it's the bottom or top half of a sphere. So how do we do that? Well, we can look at this thing over here, and we can start typing 333.038. I get a new line by pressing enter. 333.038. You don't have to do all these digits, just a few digits is fine. Divided by 2, enter. And it gives me a total of 166.5. And I can see that that is my final answer that I would put into Delta Math. But what if I don't want to use this A to the B key? What if I want to do it the way that we do it with our calculators, some of us in the classroom? Well, you just do it 4 divided by 3 times pi times 4.3 times 4.3 times 4.3. And remember, we still have to take that answer, which is the area of the sphere, chop it in half by dividing by 2. And I get 166.51. And that concludes our trip to Egypt.